Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We are just about to start. I hope that you have enjoyed your lunch and you are ready for this afternoon panel discussion that will be dedicated to Ukraine's reconstruction. But at the same time, I would like to also offer you the alternative deep talk, which are taking place on the second floor. And there you can talk about human development and inequalities. Our speakers like Tanya Cox from Concord Europe, Marlene Holzner from DG International Partnerships, and Benjamin Ovil from Concord, Sweden, will talk about the importance of education, healthcare, water and sanity. So these deep talks are also scheduled at the same time as our third panel discussion, which is starting right now. Ukraine's reconstruction will be a major rebuilding effort, reshaping economic, public and legislative aspects of Ukraine. This process will pose big challenges, but also opportunities for all parts engaged. What will be the role of actors from Central and East Europe, and what is their comparative advantage? Let's start the third discussion panel moderated by Jana Kobzová from the Office of the President of Slovak Republic. Jana, please join me, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I think we're about to start. Please welcome all the panelists. There is no sitting order. Thank you. As Eva Mihočková already said, the discussion today is going to be about Ukraine and how Central Europe can support our neighbor. We would change the choreography of the panel a bit because one of our speakers is a bit pressed for time. So before we go into the panel discussion, I would like to start Mustafa Naem, who is the head of Agency for Reconstruction in Ukraine, to start and share his views on what Ukraine needs right now, not just in terms of military aid, but also from where he is sitting right now in terms of reconstruction and relief. Mustafa, you don't need a long introduction. I just want to say for those who don't know you in person or haven't heard about you, you've been involved in civil society and media life in Ukraine for almost 2 decades. Also worked as a member of parliament, and for the few months now, you have the job of heading the agency that was established recently to oversee and coordinate the reconstruction efforts in Ukraine. Mustafa, what do you see as the biggest challenges and needs in Ukraine right now, and how can Central European actors help you?
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for having me, Jana, for all attendants and guests. Thank you for your attention and support to Ukraine these tough times. I will jump into the topic. First of all, when we are talking about reconstruction of Ukraine, it is very important for all of us to understand that we are not talking now the restoration, the full-scale restoration, which we can talk only after victory of Ukraine. For this moment, all our team, and I'm talking not only about our agency of restoration, but also Ministry of Infrastructure, all our government and local authorities, we're talking more about survival stage, which can help us to proceed this fight and to win this war. So why actually and how our agency created, and then I will describe what is the challenges and topics we are focused now. The thing is that last year, this time, maybe even earlier in October, started challenge of our energy infrastructure. And all our team, infrastructure team was involved in helping energy grid to protect their facilities from different kind of threats. For that moment, we talked only about first level of protection. We're talking about shrapnels. And because all these auto transformers are filled of oil, and even a small shrapnel could make big fire and explosion of this auto transformer. So we protected this facilities the way we used to do in our smaller substation and railways. And for that time, our agency and all our team was involved in different works. I'm talking about restoration, capital repairment of different facilities, and also helping local authorities which was affected by war, and cleaning the streets and cleaning after the occupation those territories which was affected by shellings. Our agency was created in January, and in December. In January, I was honored to be appointed as a head of the agency. And for this moment, we at least organized and built up all infrastructure for restoration, and we understand how it can work. Sharing experience with the local authorities and also gaining experience from all our colleagues around the world. We talked with our colleagues in Japan Rescue Construction Agency, with the infrastructure authority in Great Britain, and also we talked yesterday with the Pakistani colleagues, which are quite effective. And of course, we made research on how this reconstruction and restoration works was done in other countries. And I will just describe how the model the world used to work in this kind of, after this kind of wars or catastrophes. There are three models which we see. First is, for example, like Afghanistan and Syria or Iraq, when we understand that there is external player who worked on these territories and who helped to restore these territories. And they actually was decision-making on financement, on planning and management of reconstruction. Also, we have examples of countries like Japan or United States, which had their own agencies which was responsible for restoration of territories after catastrophes like Fukushima or like outer hurricanes in United States. And then we understand that these countries could have privilege to plan this reconstruction restoration, and they have time and they have luxury to plan this kind of works and systematic and very strategic approach. The way the situation we have in Ukraine is quite different, because first of all, it is definitely not going about some external player who can come and restore Ukraine, because despite war, Ukraine is still as a government and state works. So we have all these problems you have in your countries about local authorities, tension between local authorities and central government agencies. And we're talking about bureaucracy, allowances, and all these procedures which should be followed. And of course, it makes some problem to do it faster way. The other problem we have, it doesn't have luxury to plan this. I think it will be quite naive to ask people now who are under shellings, and of course, mostly we're talking about affected territories along the front line. So it will be very naive to ask them to make some strategic approach for restoration, because they're still under shellings. Not all of them are capable to do that. And what is very important, we doesn't have experience how to do that. And we asked different colleagues from around the world who has this kind of experience to restoration of the cities, villages in whole. There are many experts who can do specific facilities. There are many experts who can do big infrastructure projects, but there are few of those who understands how to plan restoration of territories, including all these issues like business, housing, social infrastructure, utilities, and etc. So we are now learning our experience how to do. And on the way of this restoration, we have, as you said, Jana, we have some challenges, and I will describe the biggest one. First of all, we now prioritized all our works on three priorities, which is allowed us to survive and to work in this hostile environment. First is, of course, everything which is about war. Our agency and our ministry is not involved directly in military actions on the ground, but we are responsible for logistics. So we are also responsible for sheltering those facilities which needs to be protected. And we are responsible for critical infrastructure. So main important and main priority of all our agency and all our team is to do everything not to stop cargoes to frontline, to stop delivering of medicines and food and ammunition to the frontline, which is very important this time. And we're proud that during all this war, we didn't have any kind of problems with the delivering of these cargoes, despite that during last 1.5 years, almost 25,000 of our roads were destroyed, 25,000 kilometers. And also there was different type of damages and also destruction of our bridges. It's more than 400 bridges which was destroyed. But we achieved to do all these repairments on constant way and on temporary bridges or some solutions which can help us to deliver our goods. And of course, in this case, and we've been talking about this priority, the main problem is that it's very difficult, first of all, to explain to many people and stakeholders that we should restore those, even understanding that it can be shelled again. And we have some of our roads, which is very important, which helps to deliver our wounded guys from the front line to the hospitals. And it takes 2 hours, 3 hours to deliver them. But if you repair these roads, it can take 40 minutes. And of course, this hours saves thousands of our lives and people who can be delivered in time. The second priority, which we are involved now, it is export. Despite all war and all this situation we have now, our economy still works. And you know that after start of the war, all our seaports was blocked. So before war, 70% of all our goods was exported through seaports. Now all these ports are blocked. You know that we have a humanitarian corridor which helps us to deliver grain, but it's only about 3 seaports, and of course they're working. But comparing the situation we had before war, now 70% of all our goods are going through roads and border checkpoints to the European Union, to countries which is neighboring with us. And of course, to support this kind of export, it is one of the biggest important topic and priority of our team, because anyway, we should deliver our goods outside and deliver goods inside. So export-import operations still works. And it takes some time and resources because, again, it's about roads, it's about bridges, it's about border checkpoints, and it's about Danube River and seaports on the Danube River, which helps us now to deliver and to export some of our goods. And they are now exporting 10 times more than they did before war, but it still is not enough. And fortunately, for our agrarian agriculture sector is that the harvest this year will be even more than previous year, but it means that we should do more for export this goods. And of course, the situation now we have with some of our neighbors like Poland, which blocked our border checkpoints, it's kind of disaster for all our business. We are now trying to achieve some results on that and trying to make negotiations, but I think it is something which is not useful for us, and it's not good for all economy. And the third priority we have, it is national-wide projects on critical infrastructure. First of all, I'm talking about protection of energy grid. Our agency is building 3 levels of protection from shrapnels, drones, and missiles for main distribution grid, and it's something which can help us to avoid crisis we had last year. We are expecting shellings for all our energy infrastructure, and the information from our intelligence says that it can start in 1 week or 10 days because winter is coming, and we understand that they are preparing for that. We see that exercises that they're doing around our borders shows that they are focused now on our energy grid. So we hope that the efforts we did last year and all these protection measurements and the protection facilities will help us to avoid the blackout we had last year. The other big project we are also involved, it is water pipeline. You know that after Kachowska hydro was exploded last June, more than 2 million people of our regions was about to stay without water. We started to build this water pipeline in June. If we will finish it in November, and for us, it's very important to finish it. And regarding these priorities, what is the challenge is that not always our partners are ready to deliver the support in time. We understand that there are procedures which should be followed by all our stakeholders. I'm talking about international financial institutions, by member states or others. But sometimes, for example, like water pipeline, we needed this money immediately. But disbursement of this money and all this bureaucracy takes too much. And for this moment, for example, structuring some loan for energy or for water pipeline can take 6-8 months. But we had only 2 months to build this water pipeline. So we should find this money on our own budget. And of course, it's putting pressure on our contractors and our builders. And that's another challenge. The third challenge, it is, of course, labor and people. Many of our people were drafted, and we see now lack of people who can work on the construction. And it's not only about people, itself, but it's also about people who have this experience, because we didn't do this scale of works as a government. And government never did this scale of customer jobs, because we should be customer of main constructions in country. So we have lack of expertise of those people who can do that. I think that will be a big challenge. I know that many of our regions are now gaining expertise on that. They're developing their capacity, but it's still, I feel that we have lack of expertise on that. And the third issue is, of course, it's about expertise and, the challenge is expertise on building back better. I know that it is, and and heard from all our countries that we should do it that way, and that we should build something better than we had during Soviet Union. But even if you compare with your country, not only Slovak, I'm talking about all European countries. It is not always easy to build something better with the same people, the same expertise, the same standards. So we should implement these standards, and we should, somehow use to work with these standards. And of course, when you're talking about Ukraine, it is very difficult when you have this scale. And sometimes we feel that, unfortunately, the restoration can go different way. Though that, for example, we should restore capital repairment of some building, people should live there. And of course, we doesn't have time for new standards because, for example, we made workshop with our Great Britain colleagues. For them, it takes 1.5 years capital repairment of some building on new standards, because they have strategic approach, they have standards, the authorities, and there are people who can do it. We doesn't have the time. And of course, I think this challenge is very important. And what I see is that the main way how to avoid this kind of risks is to gain this experience initially and literally involving international players and foreign companies in restoration of Ukrainian facilities. And we are now doing everything for our foreign companies around the world and our neighbor countries to allow them to attend our tenders and to implement their standards, how they see to restore our facilities. And last, one of the biggest challenge we had, and we should say about it very clear. It's about, of course, it's about trust of our partners and our citizens and our local authorities to the procedures, how all this money spends. Of course, we are talking about vested interest. We can talk about corruption. We can talk about misunderstanding or misusing or violation of the rules. But this challenge, I think, is not only Ukrainian problem, but in our ministry, in our agency, we are now trying to make everything as much transparent as we can. From our point of view, the only one way to do that, it is to make all information public. So we took decision last month. So we published all our bill of quantities, all our prices. And so now all journalists, media, and law enforcement agencies and our partners can see how much does it cost. And if we have some risks, we have already developed our protocol how to react on this kind of risks or rumors or smears about our tenders, about construction. And I think for this moment, we we just small agency. We started 8 months ago, but for this moment, we can say that avoided all our crises. We doesn't have any kind of public scandals. We doesn't have criminal provisions. We doesn't have any kind of challenges from our partners who provide us money, and we're proud that we can prove that our agency is still is the same level of trust we started, and we even gaining this trust, involving international consultants, international advisors, international experts to help us to do all these issues transparent. So I will stop here. If any questions, please feel free. I will be happy to answer.
Mustafa, thank you very much. Is this working on? Yes, it is. And thank you for highlighting the vast scope and the multifaceted challenges that you're facing whilst you're fighting an active war. I mean, as we speak, there is an air alert in Kyiv. And we are speaking on a day when Ukraine has received the invitation to start, or has received the recommendation to begin the accession talks with Europe, which is with the European Union, which is something which I think the Ukrainians deserve credit and congratulations for, but which is also something that Ukrainians have been paying a very high price for. I mean, we will discuss in the course of the panel a lot of the things what you mentioned about the different challenges you mentioned, not just in terms of time, costs. You didn't mention the cost. According to the estimates, the cost of reconstruction of Ukraine is for now at least $400 billion. You talked about the procedures, you talked about the creation of trust and involvement on different sectors. This cannot happen just through governments or businesses. There is also an audience of civil society here, so I'm sure that the organizations present here and governments present here will either be in touch with your agency or are already working with your agency and your partners. I don't know if there is any immediate question from the audience, but I understand you also need to run. So thank you very much for your time, and we will continue with the discussion with the panel that we have here. Have a good day in Kyiv.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for your support. And of course, yes, I'm sorry I didn't mention that. We're already working with the state of Slovakia and with the government, and we received your support on rebuilding some of our facilities. And regarding agency, we had direct support on building water pipeline. And actually, we used this money, and thank you very much. Well, that's very important. I think when we will finish this water pipeline, I would be glad if your government representative can be on this opening, because it's really important. We will deliver water to 1.5 million people during 3 months, and it's quite fast. It's 144 kilometers, and I think that will be the fastest project we made, and it's one of the most expensive. So we'll be very happy to invite you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. We will now move to the panel, and I'll start with the introductions for the audience to understand what wealth of experience we have here and different perspectives, which I think can help us put together an idea of how vast, but also how coordinated and how efficient this support can be at this very moment. I will start from my very first, which is Orest Takac, who is a representative of the European Commission, who is currently working in DG NEAR, dealing directly with Ukraine relief and reconstruction, but whose background is also in Eastern Europe and economic policies. So I think that's very important. Of course, the European Commission is one of the biggest donors, not just in Ukraine, but also globally. To your right is Deputy Foreign Minister of Czechia, Mr. Jan Marian. Jan Marian is not just Deputy Minister, he is also someone who understands the region very well, has worked in different capacities on Ukraine, Belarus and Russia for a long time. And I'm not saying a secret that before that you wore an NGO hat. So he's also someone who deeply understands the issues and challenges and possibilities that civil society can play and have in this process. To his right is David Nanyang Lee, representative of Taipei Representative Office in Bratislava, whose administration is also involved in providing assistance to Ukraine, and we'd be more than happy to hear your perspective on this, and also the support you're providing to civil society actors here in Slovakia so they can help Ukraine. And closest to me, but not last, is Grzegorz Gruca, who is the Vice President of Polish Humanitarian Action, who has been a long-time development aid practitioner, also someone who's formed his experience not just in Eastern Europe, but also in Asia and Middle East, and someone who's been deeply involved in Ukraine for over a decade, if not two. Let me maybe start with Deputy Foreign Minister Jan Marian. How do you see the challenges? And I think the one thing that we've heard from Mustafa Naim very clearly was just the sheer scope of what needs to be done within the framework that's currently possible with the constant bombing, shelling ongoing in large parts of Ukraine. Where do you see, as the government of Czechia, see the priorities and possibilities, and how much of that can be done through government, and how much of that is useful to do through other actors, such as civil society? How do you see the cooperation and synergies between those?
Thank you. Thank you, and I'm happy to be here. Easy question, right? Where should I start? I think first, Czechia has been supporting Ukraine since 2014 and even before. And we started well before the second Russian aggression, and we've been very active since the aggression started. And I think we have to continue on different level, be it political support, be it events like Ukrainian Crimean platform, be it our full support, as you know well, to the Ukraine Peace Formula, be it support to the community of Ukrainians in Czechia, be it financial support, be it support through EU integration to the reforms, and of course, last but not least, military support, bilateral cooperation between different Czech ministries, agencies. And the role of civil society is vital, both in Czechia, in the EU, and in Ukraine. I think you know better than I do how important Ukrainian civil society has been before Maidan and up till now. And of course, this is not only about government and civil society, it's also about the local administration. We have had many bilateral agreements and cooperations between different Czech regions. And this is something that was here well before the first and second Russian aggression. So we need to continue, and of course, each member state has something where it can contribute. And it's also vital to coordinate with international organizations, with the key partners, US, Taiwan, for instance, and others. So it's really important, and of course we might be sometimes a bit tired. I think Putin has been hoping for our Ukraine fatigue, but I think we are still standing, and we will continue, because this is first important because of our values, and second because of our security.
Thank you. Grzegorz, can I jump to you? I mean, Poland has been involved in Ukraine, with Ukraine, and supporting Ukraine for a long time, not just at the level of government, but also very actively involved civil society. And your organization is working on the ground in Ukraine. Mustafa outlined the priorities in kind of three areas. One of them is the kind of immediate relief that just cannot wait until the war is over. The other one is more about prevention. And the third one is, of course, the whole logistics of state, of functioning as a state, be it exports, military assistance, and so on. Where do you see the role for NGOs in all of this, and civil society in general, not just in humanitarian, but also development aid?
Well, thank you for the invitation, and I think it's very useful that we can see here, thanks to Ambrela, the voice of non-governmental organizations that always have played a crucial role, because at the end of the day, of course, it's about the societies being together, working together, supporting each other, and this is the role of NGOs, to bring those two societies together and complement the work that the states and the local governments are doing. We are there to support in the areas where the government, and we wouldn't be able to sustain government, because we are talking about huge infrastructure projects. We see our role to complement where it's underground. A good example is that we are supporting, for example, electric generators to the IDPs camps in Ukraine. So then the local government doesn't need to think about that. They can, concentrate on the infrastructure, bridges, as we heard in other projects. Of course, development is something we are also interested, but we are seeing development and assistance of an NGO more as sharing of our experience as, for example, the experience on Poland's way to European Union, on Poland's assistance in the social systems. We are, for example, in Ukraine from the very beginning assisting elderly people with psychosocial support, something that is more and more needed on daily basis. We are also supporting Ukrainian children with psychological support in Poland. As you know, we have many refugees. So I think by cooperating with the local governments, Ukrainian hromadas and local societies and local NGOs in Ukraine, we can come up with a mix of supplementing of the small sometimes but very important areas. And of course, we are also training local governments in terms of psychosocial support. It's also training of local social workers. So it will be on a long run effect to the society. Of course, on a daily basis, we are doing the same as most of the NGOs here in the hall. We are supporting with food kits, hygiene kits, dedicated kits for elderly people, for children. So it's somehow a normal humanitarian work. But I think those two are very important because I can only admire the resilience of the Ukrainian people and the country. Because without that, we wouldn't be here talking about the issues that we are facing. And I think the whole international community has to do its best to make sure that the Ukrainians feel supported and are supported as long as it takes.
Thank you, Grzegorz. Thank you also for mentioning the need, not just in terms of material reconstruction, but also the reconstruction of the soul of the nation, in terms of the trauma that the Ukrainian society is going through and will have to address and cope with. Let me turn to Representative Nanyang Lee. Your administration has been involved in supporting Ukraine through different actors. Where do you see the priorities? And if I may ask for the benefit of the audience, why does your administration care? It's often, especially when we go into the discussions, as Deputy Foreign Minister would mention, Russia's war in Ukraine is often seen as Europe's war, as the war that outside of Europe is causing unpleasant impact, but is seen as something that should be dealt with and addressed by primarily the West or the Europeans, because that's taking place on the European soil. So if you could also talk a bit more about why your administration is involved and is supporting also through the actors in Slovakia, the efforts in Ukraine.
Yes. Well, I feel honored to be here and thank you for the invitation. Right after the war, the second day, I was at the border, trying to rescue our compatriots across the border over. I still remember it's a bitter experience. It's cold. People line up. And there was a female bring a child with her, try to cross the border. I never could thought that it can be happening in this 21st century, To us, that made me feel the war is getting closer to us because we also have a big neighbor try to bully us. Even though after 70 years of separate, but under the shadow of a war, we don't think that it's gonna happen to us. So close. This time we really feel it, and our people really feels that. So within a week, we collect more than $9 million donation from the general public alone. And then there's the problem for the administration, for the government, how we transfer it to Ukraine. That's as a task. I still remember I received a phone call on my way to Košice from my foreign ministry. Try to do something because we are a neighboring country to Ukraine. So I talked with the Slovak government, and the foreign ministry was very, very supportive. We transferred more than 360 tons of humanitarian aid from Taiwan to Ukraine last year, and that was very efficient. I was talking with the Foreign Ministry, the Ministry of Interior, and also the Ministry of Defense, try to help us to transfer all those aids to Ukraine. I was quite moved. You know, this is my second term working Slovakia. Never saw the government so efficient, so helpful. You know, that proves the government is really want to help. That was my experience with the government. And this year we are trying to make a donation of $5 million to help. And this time with the help from the government office, we're dealing with the NGOs. And that is another different experience. I found it's also very supportive, very efficient and right to the point. They have a cooperation with the local NGOs and find out make a screening of what they need, and every month we have a meeting, starting meeting. Try to select the projects that we should do first. So in the last 2 months, we try to help to collect money for the demining. That's important, and also try to build the bomb shelters for the schools, so the children can get back to school. You know, as a representative office in Bratislava, it's hard for me to make the right move or the decision to help them. But the NGOs, they really made a good move. And I also work with the local communities, the refugee communities. I was 2 days ago, we have a visitor from Taipei. They want to see how we can do more for Ukraine refugees here. So I went to see their communities. I was quite moved to see how they help their own people with the, I think this SME, Spolu. I was there, and they use their own people to help, to do the education and training for integration, education. That's something new to me. I thought they have to integrate with the Slovak schools, but they do that by themselves. And I also visit the community for the Kharkiv performing group. They do training every day over there. And they also moved the visitor from Taipei, and they said, well, we have to invite them to do a performance in Taiwan, that our people to see their culture. They know their donation is really worth of it. So that's something that I think is not just a donation from Taiwan. We are so far away from, as you just mentioned, from Europe. We are all human beings. And I think through this engagement, I can feel that the people in Taiwan really feels the suffer, the devastating situation caused by the war, and we want to help. And the last point I would like to point out is for the restoration or reconstruction. So I just talked with my Polish friend. There's a licensing problem, right? Even for the doctors. So I told them, hold your horses. Let me think about it. Talk with the NGOs, how they could assist. You know, those are the things I think we have to work together with the actors in CEE countries and also with the European Union I think it's a good opportunity for the EU and other foreign countries that we can work together to help not just for the Ukrainians, but also for the local businessmen, private sectors, for the technology transfer too. You know, it will be a three-way for the local people, for the foreign players, and also for Ukraine. We all can benefit or try to help to make this restoration or reconstruction smoother and faster together. Thank you.
Thank you for both presenting the work that Taiwan is doing, but also highlighting the importance of the fact that the gross violation of international law is a gross violation anywhere it happens in the world, and it needs to be stood up to. Mr. Tokac, could I turn to you and ask you about the way that EU has reacted to Russia's aggression in Ukraine? What we heard from Mustafa is also the need to speed up procedures, to get away with some of the bureaucracy, find ways of being faster, more efficient, more reactive to current needs. And at the same time, you have the EU Commission, which is, I think, especially from the NGO side, talking about my own experience as well a while ago, is not the most flexible actor. How could you talk, besides saying what and how you're helping and assisting Ukraine now in reconstruction, are there any ways that the situation on the ground has forced you to rethink your procedures as a biggest donor to Ukraine and brought you to the point where you're trying to engage different actors? I know you're looking also at the involvement of businesses, and I think that's something that'd be very useful for the audience to talk about as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question and also for having me. First of all, in terms of how the EU has reacted, I think February 2022 has been really a defining moment in Europe's history. We have seen Ukraine being brutally attacked by Russia, and we have seen the devastating consequences that it has had both on the society, on the people, on the economy as well. Ukraine has paid really the highest price with human lives, with people being affected, with so many people fleeing the country, 8 million refugees seeking refuge inside of the European Union, so many people experiencing the social trauma of what is still going on with the bombardments, with the attacks, with the air raid sirens. This is only something that we try to understand. We can never fully understand. We visit, we're there, but still, after some days, we go back, and we never get the full scale of what is really happening. And for this resilience that Ukraine as a country, Ukrainian government, Ukrainian administration, and its society have shown, we must be thankful to them really for fighting this war for the whole of Europe, for European values, for freedom, for democracy. And I think this is very, very important to keep in mind on the background of everything that we're doing. In terms of the resilience of the government and the society, I would like to underline that we have seen really the government delivering a lot and working fast, working flexibly. Mustafa Naim talked about the immense damages that Ukraine has suffered, but also, in fact, I got some figures from his team in terms of the work that they're doing to rebuild the country amid the aggression. And I have here 2,000 kilometers of roads cleared from rubble, 40 bridges rebuilt, 900 train stations and depots renewed. This is something that is really applaudable, and they're doing this in terms of reconstruction, and they're also doing tremendous work in terms of the administration, legislative work. You mentioned at the very beginning that today, for the first time, the European Commission issued a report as part of its enlargement package on Ukraine, where it has recommended to open accession negotiations, which is another historical step that the EU has taken just today. I think the press conference was just at midday, so we are past that point. We also see that the economy is recovering, that it has sort of adapted to the war situation. The latest figure that I have seen published by the Ukrainian government was a growth percentage of over 5. So growing, the economy is growing more than 5% in the third quarter, so from the first to the third quarter this year as compared to the last year. So we are seeing resilience on the side of the people, the administration, the economy as well. And this shows that the reconstruction is not only a challenge, but it is also an opportunity for Ukraine, but also for the international community to build a better Ukraine back, to in fact also use the occasion of business opportunities, of ties that can be and are established between the EU and Ukraine itself. At the beginning of the war, what the EU has done is a lot of crisis assistance, responses to the situation that has emerged. Since the war, since the invasion, in fact, began, Team Europe, which includes EU, its member states, and also European financial institutions, have made available 81 billion in assistance to Ukraine. And this includes all sorts of assistance, development, humanitarian, but also loans to the government and the military assistance. We have worked at the beginning repurposing existing programs, and this is in particular in the part of the EU Commission where I work, in the Ukraine service, which engages in the enlargement accession process, but also in providing financial assistance to Ukraine. We have changed the scope of many of our programs to help with the crisis situation, building pontoon or delivering pontoon bridges, delivering electricity generators, working to rehabilitate critical infrastructure, rebuild roads, hospitals, schools, provide housing to internally displaced persons, and also work with companies to build back better, to recover their damaged infrastructure, but also just to create economic activity, which is important amid the war. And here, this has a direct impact on the daily life of people. It's people getting to school, getting to jobs when you rebuild the road, what Mustafa Naim was talking about. It's the basic income of the businesses that engage in whatever they're doing to contribute to the economy. And all of this really is important amid this situation, to have a strong economy that can also support the war effort that Ukraine is engaging in. Early on in the process, we have announced that we will create a new financial instrument for Ukraine. And in June this year, we have proposed what we call the Ukraine Facility, which is a new, really unprecedented kind of instrument. The Commission proposal involves 50 billion in financing for Ukraine over the next 4 years. And it has several novelties. It is first multi-annual. It also has several strands of assistance that we are providing to the government budget of Ukraine, to mobilize investments and private sector with investment instruments, and also to catalyze the best expertise that is available in the world, on the market, in order to rebuild Ukraine better. And this is something that was mentioned already in the past. The expertise is lacking, and we need also financial tools in order to mobilize the best minds for the recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine, because this is a generational effort.
Can I interrupt you here and maybe go back to the question that I had about, what have you changed in the way you operate compared to all the other assistance programs? I mean, the European Commission has had a very long engagement with Ukraine. It's not like you started in February. But the one thing that, and it's not unique in Ukraine, it's often the case that the European EU-funded projects take a long time to start. there is an understandable phase of preparation and so on. How much of that has been the case in Ukraine, and how much of your procedures have changed? Has that become more accessible for civil society actors in the EU compared to February 2022 and before that?
So what I would give, and perhaps continue a little bit on the proposed regulation for the Ukraine facility. Whenever the EU proposes, the EU Commission proposes a new legal act, typically it takes really years to propose, to do a proper consultation with the civil society, with the business community, to do consultation of different services, of different institutions, then go through the interinstitutional negotiation process. EU Commission proposes the regulation, then the two co-legislators, the Parliament and the EU Council, they negotiate and they have the legislative power. We proposed the regulation in June this year. We are in November now. We're entering the formal interinstitutional negotiations, and we are working towards having an agreement by the end of the year. 6 months to have a new legislative act that is designed to provide an unprecedented amount of funds, 50 billion, something that the EU has never done in the past for any partner country. To have this done in 6 months is record speed. So I would definitely say that the case of Ukraine, I mentioned, it is a defining moment for Europe. It is also a defining moment for the EU and for the EU institutions, because we are really breaking all the records in terms of legislative processes. On the other part of your question on the funding, I must say that we did introduce with this repurposing of existing programs a lot more flexibilities in terms of how the funding can be used. Many of the programs, they were, for example, operating in eastern part of Ukraine. They were, back in the day, a big priority for us was support to the Azov Sea region. These territories, unfortunately, are occupied by Russia now. So we needed to repurpose this funding for other objectives. And other objectives, this is really the crisis response, fast rehabilitation, rebuilding of critical infrastructure. And we managed to do that through changes that were introduced into those programs. I think we also have a lot to learn. And I think the experiences that we have done and we have had in the past with the programs that I just mentioned, they will inform what we will do in the future with the Ukraine facility, in particular with its pillars that will be designed to mobilize investments, work with the private sector, but also on the point of technical expertise. I think there is a particular role for civil society organizations to come in to advise both the Ukrainian government and also the international community, the European Commission, on how to perhaps follow best practices in terms of transparency, anti-corruption. This is something where civil society organizations play a very important role and where we want to have partnerships in place.
Thank you. We will soon go to the questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand, try to catch my hand. But in the meantime, I'll go back with two quick questions to Deputy Minister Marian and to Grzegorz. I'm trying to phrase it in a way that kind of makes it a realistic comparison. If you look at Central European countries, we are not the biggest donors. Where do you see the biggest added value a country like Czechia or Slovakia or Poland can make in Ukraine when it comes to supporting either its reconstruction or its humanitarian needs relief?
You mean our added value as the region? Or
your country, yeah.
Well, I would say first, certain common historical experience. Second, geography. This is very important for the whole region. Third, historical ties and also recent ties such as communities. We've had large Ukrainian community in Czechia well before the war. We can also offer our expertise in transition, democratic reforms. And of course, we have now the same experience with the Russian behavior. Think of Verbětice and other issues. And of course, we see how important this is for us, as I said before, as to not only as to values, but also as to our security. And I mean, for Czech companies, Ukrainian market is and will be crucial in the future. This is a big market with a lot of potential, not only in industry and agriculture or now weapons production, but also in IT, for instance. And let me also mention briefly, at least so that we don't forget about the complicated situation of Moldova, which is in the same or similar position. So I think for us, this is very much logical. And maybe now the added value or the role of Central Europe is that the center of gravity for the time being has shifted a bit within the EU. Since we've been through some issues with Russia before the war, we've been helping Ukraine from the very first moment. And we also understand and understood that we can learn and have to learn from Ukraine, be it hard security, soft security, resilience, disinformation, etc. And this is the message we can take to Brussels as a country who has certain expertise on the region, who's been through successful Czech presidency, and who has currently clear foreign policy vision based on values and also very much centered around security.
Thank you. Grzegorz, I'll turn to you as the sole representative of NGO sector or organizations that are providing humanitarian relief on the civil society side to Ukraine. I would both rephrase the question about where you see the added value. You mentioned the kind of experience with EU accession process as one. Where do you see other possibilities, but also what are the needs of civil society sector in Central Europe so you can provide your assistance and support to Ukraine better? What is needed? Is it the issue of funding? Is it the issue of procedures? Is it the question of priorities, or all of it?
It's of course all of it, but I think the important thing is our experience and the fact that we need patience, and we need, unfortunately, because of the war, there will be no shortcuts. The lessons must be learned is already happening with the issue of corruption. Sometimes for Ukrainians, they say it's easier to do things, to run things the way they used to be. But we have to be persistent. We have to show that our countries overcame most of the issues. And it's all to be done in Ukraine as well. And to keep the faith that it will happen. To some extent, we are a proof in the region that change can come, change can happen, and people, societies can benefit from the change. And I think already before the war, Ukraine had a very vibrant civil society. And now, during the beginning of the war, similarly as to Poland, the huge response to the Ukrainian crisis in Poland and Czech and Slovakia was done by the civil society and even by the society itself. The fact that practically all refugees in Poland were absorbed into our apartments, there were no refugee camps, proves that the countries and the societies live together, they understand each other. Of course there will be tensions, of course there will be issues along the way, but as long as we will be able to bring the faith and show that there is a future and there is a way that they can follow, of course they will make their own, their own experience and their own mistakes, and we all will do. But Poland and the region can show that it's going to be difficult, it's not going to be easy, it will take time, and at the end of the road there is a success.
Thank you. I don't see any questions from the audience, so I'll continue with my questions. Some of you have mentioned the possibilities for involvement of businesses, and that's also something we heard in the beginning. And I wanted to ask you a bit more, maybe David and Honza, but also you, Orest, how you see that business development and where you see the biggest risk at the moment. Is it the sheer mitigation of security risks, which you see as the biggest barrier? Is it the issue with insurance, or what is holding businesses from being a bit more involved, and how can that be facilitated with the understanding of the security environment that they're operating in?
If I may start, first, of course, still the security situation is complicated, but I understand we see Czech and other companies active in Ukraine, of course, and let's not discuss only the reconstruction or assistance, let's discuss the future trade. Of course, the EU enlargement will not be an easy and quick process, but we will greatly benefit from the Ukrainian market and vice versa. For us, one of the key points now is the insurance. So we have the Ukraine fund within the Czech State National Insurance Company. And this is something we will continue with. Of course, we are not the only member state that's facing this issue, so we will, and of course, in general, I'd like to mention the business climate, rule of law, corruption that we've already mentioned before. But again, what we see, what's being done under war conditions in Ukraine is tremendous in terms of reform legislation. And I think this region is one of those, as I said before, who can support Ukraine on the reform path to the EU, and our businesses will greatly benefit from these EU standards.
David, can you first go and mention the experience you had with discussing these issues with the companies you mentioned? You know, where do they see their added value, and where do they see as biggest obstacles, and how could those be addressed? I know an easy question, but
actually, I've been asking this question for quite a long time. Our businessmen, they would like to get involved in the reconstruction in Ukraine for a long time. But there's a problem. How we can work with EU, I think EU plays a very important role there. Set the standards. The standards, and also for Ukraine, their access to EU, there's a time and for them to get used to it. And how I think the neighboring countries can share the experience with them, but also during the reconstruction, how to apply for the get them to I don't want to use the word learn, but get the knowledge, know-how, how to do it. Facilitate for Ukraine's access to EU is another aspect, and set the standards for the international companies. It's not just the neighboring countries or the EU companies wants to help or get involved in the reconstruction in the business aspect. The whole world, I think Japan wants to get into too, right? South Korea, Taiwan. We all have the technology and also the expertise, how to do it, but the problem is the standard. The EU standard, it has to apply to the EU standards. As I just mentioned, that we have a group of doctors just called me a couple of days ago. They want to help, but will their license being recognized over there? Can they practice over there? Those are the I think the bottom lines. The ground rules can be set, and that the world understand how to play the game and make it more efficient. And as maybe I should add one more thing, that Taiwan wants to support Ukraine till the end, even though we haven't seen the end of the light from the end of the tunnel yet, but we think it's important to support Ukraine. A lot of people talk about the fatigue, but I think my panelists all agree that we should support Ukraine. That's for the security here, not in Europe, but also to other areas of the world too. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for highlighting a need for continued support. But I think the unsung heroes of what's been happening in Ukraine is also their businesses and government itself. You have rarely a situation, and I think, Gregor, you know a bit more about this than I do because you've worked in different conflict environments where central government is not just operational, but quite efficient. The government retains capacity and control of the processes inside the country, which is sometimes a new experience for some donors as well, who are used to kind of coming to a country and expecting that they'll be running parts of it, which is not the case in Ukraine, where really it's the government, central government, that remains the key decision makers and remains the partner for donors such as the EU or other governments. Could you talk a bit more about the business involvement and how can the EU help? One thing that here in Slovakia was discussed a lot was how to facilitate that business involvement in the current climate. And Deputy Minister Marian mentioned the issue of insurance as one of the biggest problems, which I think is also something that Slovakia is looking at. How do you provide that in the absence of commercial insurance at the moment? Is this something the EU can also help with and is looking at?
So let me touch upon the 2 points. One raised by Mr. Ambassador about the EU standards and also about the de-risking instruments insurance. In terms of EU standards, I think Ukraine has a very strong commitment to approximate its legislation, but also fight against corruption, approximate and work on rule of law reforms, set up an enabling business environment in Ukraine that would be very similar to that of the European Union. And they have done a lot of work in this regard, in particular also in the last couple of months, really heading up to this report that we have just published today. EU standards, it's not just about law, right? This is also about Ukraine, in fact, both benefiting from these higher standards of doing business, of production, environmental, digital law, but also food safety standards, for example. All of this relates to Ukraine taking a benefit and after this war emerging from it stronger, with a stronger economy, with a more resilient economy. And their businesses have a particular role to play. And I think this is on both sides, on the EU and Ukrainian side. And in fact, also the international business is very much interested to be there, take part in the reconstruction of Ukraine, while at the same time, the risks are huge. There is a war ongoing. There has been massive bombardments of energy infrastructure at the end of last year, in particular, leading up to the winter. But also recently with the bombings of the ports, of the Black Sea ports, with the issues that Ukraine has in terms of exporting its grain and trading. We have been trying to work with the international community, notably with development finance institutions, banks, and the insurance market to bring an instrument that would help businesses absorb or help in fact businesses not to take the risks that relate to war, to bombings, to the blockade, the naval blockade that Russia is imposing or is trying to impose on Ukrainian ports. And here we are experimenting with several tools where we would provide cover for war risk insurance, in particular for big reinsurance companies to return back to Ukraine, businesses like Munich Re, Zurich Re, but also other global reinsurers, that they would be able to come back to Ukraine, de-risk the business so that you see also an increase in flows, because not all of these risks, they are actually materializing. People are afraid to go do business in Ukraine because of the perception. But in fact, if you compare the current situation with how things were 1 year ago, the situation is different. And there is also money and profits to be made in Ukraine. And I think both Ukrainian and EU businesses acknowledge that and are ready to go into it. But government intervention would be needed, and we are working on it.
Thank you, Jan Marian. I wanted to have a quick two-finger. Before you do, I just want to say this is the last possibility to raise your hands. We are approaching the end of the panel, so if there is no question, I'll go back to the panelists. And after you have your two-finger, I will ask each and every one of you if there are things you do differently now in the 21st month of the full-scale invasion. Are there things you would do differently in your respective institutions? But please don't answer that question just yet. Do your two fingers, and then we'll go through the whole panel.
It's maybe on the same way, and I was hoping for some questions from the Czech delegation, but we haven't arranged this before, so sorry for this. I think first we should have done more on our weapon deliveries before. This is also about air defense, and this would be about more protection for our projects and the businesses. And second, and this is still ongoing, it's the sanctions against Russia. And we've done a lot. We have to do more, look into the loopholes and reach out to third countries. And we have the 12th sanctions package in the pipeline. So let's continue with this process as well, which is also part of the support to the business climate.
Indeed, I mean, just to say, in the first months of the full-scale invasion, it was this region and countries like Czechia, Slovakia, Poland, the Baltic countries who have provided the bulk of the military support to Ukraine at the time when a number of other countries were still hesitating or kind of being slower about the pace of the delivery. But please, David, is there anything you would do differently or your institutions?
Well, after almost 2 years working with government and the NGOs, I think in the future, if we could turn the clock back, I really appreciate the support from the government, but I think the NGOs in this country are doing a perfect, superb job. My experience with all of them, I really admire them to help a country that is devastating and doing things very efficiently. And at the same time, also, I have to thank our NGOs. They are also doing more work than the government, you know, to collect the humanitarian goods. It was sorted by the religious group in Taiwan. They mobilized over 1,000 people to do that. Because it's the warehouse of my foreign ministry is about the same size as this room. It's full. How to sort it? My colleague told me that it's almost a mission impossible, but the NGO, they did it. Within a week, they did it. And the other thing I would like to add is that for the insurance, I think we participated with the EU on that. That's an important aspect too. With the insurance, we'll encourage more business group to get into there. And I would like to use this opportunity to thank my partner panelists. Learn a lot from you guys, really. And I hope that we will all work together to help Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, the one thing that I should have mentioned and omitted, and it's my remiss, is to say the work of the Slovak NGOs. Some of them are sitting in the room who have been at the border on the first day, at the time when the state crisis response has been just slowly starting to gear towards the action. And they were there on the front lines and helping a lot. And in fact, I think when you mentioned the amount of 81 billion, I'm quite sure that what's not counted is the contribution from civil society organizations, all the collections that here in Slovakia, Poland, and elsewhere, including in Asia, have been made by individuals, and the individual contributions that have made it to Ukraine, thanks to donors, individuals, and so on. So that's also something that we need to applaud to. Grzegorz.
Well, as an NGO that is supposed to be working in the crisis, I must say you're never ready for the crisis of the scale that we've met with the Ukrainian crisis. Although I did see a very well cooperation between the society, local governments. They were the first responders. Then later on, also our government came in and did its piece. And I think this is a way that we have to work together, complementing each other, the states, the local governments together when the NGOs, and then we'll manage.
Thank you. Orest, last but not least.
So I would actually very much agree with what you have said in terms of the response by civil society organizations, NGOs. I think indeed it has been very impressive how fast the civil society has moved inside of the EU, and I think to respond to help Ukraine. And I think this has also very much influenced the actions of the governments, the actions of the European Union itself. Indeed, they have been fast, agile. I think we have a lot as institution for ourselves to learn from the NGO sector in this regard. I said we were quite fast with the legislation, but I'm sure we can be much faster than that. On a more serious even note, but this is perhaps my personal reflection, but I also think that there is this understanding increasingly inside of the European Union, both at the top level in our institution, the European Commission, but also in the member states, that the political approach to Ukraine before the invasion, full-scale invasion of February 2022, has not been the right one, and that we could have prevented many of the things that have happened if the approach would have been different. And now I think we are also learning. We're also learning from Ukraine in particular, but also from countries that are close to Ukraine, that indeed we should be now in it supporting Ukraine with whatever it takes in the long haul, because they are fighting a war for the whole of Europe.
Thank you. Honza, you wanted to add one thing?
A few ideas as to lessons learned. We should have listened more to what Russia was saying before, and we should have taken this seriously. We should have done things differently in 2008, 2014. We should have invested, or we should be investing more into our homeworks, into resilience, and of course into the protection and development of the democratic institutions.
Thank you. I didn't ask this question just as a kind of entertainment to wrap up the panel. I actually asked it thinking, what would be the things we're discussing if we meet here next year? And I hope that we won't have that many lessons learned, because we'll be doing a lot of things even better, faster, more flexible. And indeed, I think this panel also confirms, and the speaker we had from Ukraine in the beginning, the need to continue and step up the support. It's not a charity, it's an investment into protection of global rules-based order. It's a protection and investment into our own security and safety. And it's an investment in peace we should all be making as actors, starting with NGOs and civil society organizations, governments, and other institutions, because this really is a joint global cause. I want to thank all of you as panelists. I want to thank audience for listening to what we had to say and what the panelists had to say, and I invite you for a short break. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana, and thank you all our dear guests for highlighting the importance of Central and East European countries in the Ukrainians' reconstruction. I guess that now it's time for another coffee break, and I hope that I will see you here again at 15:20 for another panel discussion. But I would like to draw your attention also to the last deep talk that will take place on the second floor, because there you will have a chance to talk to our Ukrainian guests and share their precious testimonies from the battlefield, from the field where they are working in Ukraine. So if you are interested in this topic, you can also join our deep talk, which starts at the same time as the plenary discussion. That means at 15:20.